Vice President Kamala Harris was recently interviewed by legendary media personality Howard Stern, and this triggered Donald Trump, who lashed out at Howard Stern not only on Truth Social, but also at a campaign event on live TV. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we have several clips to look at in this video, but as always, it's more fun to start with Donald Trump losing his temper, losing his mind in a meltdown. And we have two different mediums by which he does this. He did this at a campaign event in Pennsylvania on camera, and then he also did it on Truth Social. We're going to start with the camera stuff first. It's more fun. This is Donald Trump ranting and raving about Howard Stern, and again, legendary, infamous media personality, after Stern interviewed the vice president.
Otherwise, they'll say, these guys are so bad. A big part of our problem in this country are those people right back there. Big part of our problem. We need a free and fair press badly, desperately. I watched the way they asked questions of Kamala yesterday. Howard Stern, he's a weak guy. He's weak. He's going, what about, It was so ridiculous. Even she was embarrassed. It was like softball. But all of them. Howard, I knew him very well. I was on the show many times. I used to think he was good. Then I dropped him. And I dropped him like a dog. And his ratings are very challenged. Very challenged.
So Howard Stern sucks, but you used to like Howard Stern a lot, and then I assume he just disagreed with you, and now you dislike him. Very kindergarten, Donald, 78-year-old man, nearly 80-year-old man who was the president of the United States, wants to be the president again, talking about a media personality whom he used to be quite close with, and then lashing out at the media. And believe me, the media has its problems, but it's probably not healthy or responsible for a former president and potential future president to repeatedly refer to the media as the enemy of the people. Obviously, what Donald Trump wants when he says a free and fair press is a press that never criticizes him and profusely praises him. He wants what Viktor Orban or Xi Jinping or Vladimir Putin get in their respective countries, which is the adulation of a state-run media, because he's an authoritarian. Trump also went on Truth Social to rant about Kamala Harris and Howard Stern as well. He says, beta male Howard Stern made a fool of himself on his low-rated radio show when he, quote, interviewed lying Kamala Harris and hit her with so many softball questions that even she was embarrassed. He looked like a real fool, working so hard to make a totally incompetent and ill-equipped person look as good as possible, which wasn't very good. I dropped Howard a long time ago, like most others, and have since been credited with very good judgment. MAGA 2024. Pretty pathetic stuff coming from, again, former president who, by the way, as we discussed in a recent video, is so addicted to softballs that he won't even do a Fox News moderated debate with Vice President Kamala Harris. He won't do it. He's so afraid. He's so afraid of her, so traumatized of her, and that perhaps he might get some fact checks or some pushback or some tough questions from even the likes of right-wing Martha McCallum and Brett Baier, who openly support Donald Trump, but even they are not biased enough. Fox News is not a safe enough safe space for Donald Trump, and he has the temerity to whine about Howard Stern interviewing Vice President Harris. Pretty pathetic and hypocritical. But speaking of that interview, let's look at some of it, okay? Howard Stern interviewed President Biden before President Biden dropped out of the race when he was still the presumptive nominee. And it was a really good interview. It was really humanizing. It was really in-depth, not just about politics, but Biden's personal history. And his interview with Vice President Harris was also very good. They did talk a lot about politics as well. So we're going to play some of these clips in which they talk about abortion and Trump and the election and things like that. So we're going to play these clips and unpack it together.
Like I announced today, what my plan to make sure that Medicare covers at-home elder care, because probably a lot of your listeners are in that sandwich generation.
Oh, my God.
Where they're taking care of young kids and their elder parents.
My mother's 97 years old. I'm not even going to tell you how old I am. I know you think I'm 30, but I am so old. And I have an old mother, 97 years old. The cost is, people don't know this yet. If they're not taking care of somebody elderly, it will bankrupt you.
Absolutely.
It will
right.
be
your parent will not get the care they need, or you're going to have to leave your job.
Right.
Which means you're going to reduce your income to, depending on what it is, almost nothing in terms of your household income to do what you want to do, which is to give your parent the dignity they deserve with care.
And can you imagine if Medicare is impacted or Obamacare for that matter?
And look at what Donald Trump has been talking about for years, and look at his Project 2025. People should Google it. I mean, what they're doing and what he's talking about in terms of attacking Social Security, Medicare, undoing the Affordable Care Act, and which means the insurance companies can come back and deny people with pre-existing conditions. All of this is very real and very much at stake in this.
It is very real and very much at stake. And of course, Trump lies about his record on Medicare and Obamacare. He explicitly tried to repeal and replace Obamacare when he was president. He campaigned on it in 2016. He campaigned on it in 2020. When he was president, between January 20th, 2017 and January 20th, 2021, he made multiple attempts to get rid of Obamacare. Okay, he was famously thwarted at the last second by John McCain, Lisa Murkowski, and a couple of moderate Republicans, but it was McCain who dealt it the death blow with his famous thumbs down. Trump tried. He doesn't get credit for trying and failing to do a bad thing. We don't say, oh, well, yeah, you tried to do a bad thing. You failed to do the bad thing successfully. So I guess we're just going to not count. There's a reason that attempted murder is still a crime, for example. It's not enough to say, well, sure, I tried to kill you, but I failed. So, no hard feelings? No, still hard feelings. As a matter of fact, during the COVID pandemic, when tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, as a matter of fact, of Americans died on Trump's watch, he was in court trying to get the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, struck down. So he has a terrible track record on it. We are not obligated to take him at his word when he says now, oh, well, I've walked it back. I'm not going to do anything with Obamacare. No, you have a bad track record of trying to kill Obamacare. We have absolutely no reason to take you at your word. We have every reason to not take you at your word. As a matter of fact, I think if you take Trump at his word in this respect, you are either an idiot or hopelessly naive, just bluntly speaking. Okay, facts do matter more than your feelings. Facts do matter more than words. And Donald Trump's words contradict the facts. Defer to the facts. He tried to kill Obamacare. He probably tried to do it again. Same thing with Medicare. This guy has targeted Medicare repeatedly in the past. His budget proposals, his fiscal economic priorities involve reducing Medicare as well. This idea that he won't do it now because it's politically inconvenient, just nonsense. So we got another clip or two to play of this interview between Vice President Harris and Howard Stern.
Now, you're coming here. You went on The View this morning. Yeah. You're going to the shows. You did 60 Minutes. By the way, I thought what was so amazing about 60 Minutes is the fact that Trump turned it down.
Yeah.
I mean, it just says so much. He didn't want to be fact-checked. This is maddening. This is insanity. What do you mean you don't want to be fact-checked?
I think that, Howard, people ask me, what do you think is going on and what is the tension here? What's at stake? And there are many things, and I can be much more articulate than what I'm going to say. But ultimately, I do believe that this is an election that is about strength versus weakness.
Yeah.
And weakness as projected by someone who puts himself in front of the American people and does not have the strength to stand in defense of their needs, their dreams, their desires, the work that must happen to make sure that we are a secure nation, that we are nurturing and protecting our alliances around the world, that we are supporting America's military, that we are fighting to bring the cost of living down for working families, that we are building businesses, building growth.
Again, a pretty affirmative agenda. She talks about policy in this interview. Again, she mentioned this new one that she unveiled about having Medicare cover in-home healthcare costs, again, for the so-called sandwich generation, which not only has to, raise children, but also look after elderly and ailing parents. I think that would be a colossal benefit for an increasing number of Americans in red states and blue states, conservative and liberal. Pretty good stuff from the vice president. One last clip I want to play here in which they discuss abortion, reproductive rights, and Donald Trump's record on this respect.
Abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree.
Right.
The government shouldn't be telling her what to do with her body. She will talk with her priest, her pastor, her rabbi, her imam, but not the government.
Something
So again, it's important to point out the role that Donald Trump has played in overturning abortion rights. Because again, I think sometimes we just, unfortunately, we live in a media ecosystem with our very short attention spans that it's not enough to just assume facts speak for themselves or to even repeat the fact aggressively and then to stop talking about it. You have to constantly reaffirm the facts. You have to constantly put it in front of people. We can't spend 6 months talking about abortion and how Donald Trump, played a critical, perhaps the most critical role in reducing those rights and then go silent about it for 6 months. So it's good that she's talking about this and laying out the case. Trump did appoint the 3 Supreme Court justices that contributed to a right-wing supermajority that enabled them to overturn Roe v. Wade after 50 years. It is because of Donald Trump that these capricious trigger laws went into effect in Texas and Georgia and Florida and other places that have resulted in women suffering, struggling, and dying very often. That's all on Donald Trump. Donald Trump knows that abortion is a political loser for him and has been since 2022 and in 2023. So he's trying to distance himself from it. Don't let him. Don't let him. He owns this. Morally, he should own it politically and ethically and electorally as well. So it's important that she points this out. And the last thing I'll say, and we'll probably do a separate video about this, as you know, I feel very strongly about the United States Supreme Court. If Donald Trump wins the presidency, he will appoint 2 justices to replace Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito. So not only in that situation will Donald Trump have appointed 3 Supreme Court justices, he could appoint 5, right? And perhaps 6, perhaps Justice Sotomayor, who is, in her 60s and has health issues, perhaps she'll die, right? It's entirely possible. So you could have a situation where Donald Trump wins a second term and appoints 3 Supreme Court justices, bringing the total to 6 Trump-appointed Supreme Court justices and a 7-2 right-wing majority and a MAGA majority, a MAGA super majority. All of that's on the table, which is why it's imperative, if you're an eligible voter, to vote against Donald Trump in the upcoming election. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.